You already know what you need to do. That's the frustrating part. You know the email needs to be sent. You know you should start exercising. You know the project won't finish itself. You know exactly what the next step is. And yet, somehow, you're watching another video, checking your phone, organizing something that doesn't matter, or telling yourself, I'll start later. So why do you keep procrastinating when the solution is already sitting right in front of you? The answer is more personal than you might think. Procrastination is not always about being lazy. In fact, some of the biggest procrastinators are intelligent, ambitious, hardworking people. They can spend hours thinking about what they need to do, planning how they will do it, feeling guilty about not doing it, and imagining how good life will be once they finally get started. But thinking about doing something and actually beginning are two completely different things. Here is the first thing most people miss. Procrastination is often not a time management problem. It is an emotion management problem. That changes everything. You may not be avoiding the task itself. You may be avoiding the feeling that appears when you think about doing the task. Imagine you need to make an important phone call. The call might take 5 minutes. Physically, it is easy. You know the number. You know what you need to say. So why have you been avoiding it for 3 days? Maybe the problem is not the phone call. Maybe you are avoiding the possibility of hearing no. Maybe you are avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. Maybe you are afraid of sounding stupid. Maybe you are worried that the outcome will not be what you want. The task is small. The emotion attached to the task is much bigger. And this is where procrastination becomes confusing. Your conscious mind says, this is important. I should do it. But another part of you says, I don't want to feel what might happen if I do. And when those two voices compete, the emotional one often wins. Your brain is designed to prefer immediate relief over distant rewards. That means when a task makes you feel stressed, bored, insecure, overwhelmed, or uncertain, doing almost anything else can feel surprisingly good. You open social media. Instant relief. You watch a video. Instant distraction. You clean your desk. At least now you feel productive. You tell yourself you will start tomorrow. And suddenly, the discomfort disappears for the moment. That is the trap. The moment you postpone something, you often feel better. Not because the problem is solved, but because you temporarily escape the uncomfortable emotion connected to it. Your brain learns from that relief. Task appears. Discomfort appears. You avoid the task. Discomfort goes down. Your brain remembers, that worked. So next time, avoidance becomes even more automatic. This is why procrastination can become a habit even when you genuinely want to change. You are not necessarily choosing to sabotage yourself. Sometimes you are simply repeating a pattern your brain has learned to associate with emotional relief. Think about something you have been putting off recently. What exactly is it? Now ask yourself a more interesting question. What feeling am I trying not to experience? That question can reveal much more than asking, why am I so lazy? Maybe you are avoiding uncertainty. Maybe you are avoiding failure. Maybe you are avoiding the possibility that you will try your best and still not succeed. And sometimes, surprisingly, you might even be avoiding success. Because success can bring new expectations. If you launch the business and it starts growing, now you have to maintain it. If you get in great shape, now people expect you to stay that way. If you finally publish your work, now people can judge it. Doing nothing protects you from immediate judgment. At least temporarily. There is another reason procrastination is so powerful. Sometimes the task in your mind is much bigger than the task in reality. You tell yourself, I need to work on my project. But what does that actually mean? Your brain sees a giant cloud. The project. The entire project. Everything you need to do. every problem you might encounter, every decision you have not made yet. Of course, you don't feel like starting. But imagine changing the instruction. Instead of saying, "I need to finish the project," you say, "I am going to open the document and write one sentence." That sounds almost ridiculous. But psychologically, it is very different. Your brain is no longer facing a mountain. It is facing one small movement. And once you begin, something interesting often happens. The resistance starts to decrease. Starting is frequently harder than continuing. You may have experienced this before. You avoid going to the gym all day. You feel tired just thinking about it. But once you put on your shoes, get in the car, and begin moving, the experience is not nearly as terrible as your mind predicted. The anticipation was worse than the action. Your brain can create emotional resistance before you even begin. This is why knowing what to do is not enough. You can know every step. You can watch 10 videos about productivity. You can buy a planner. You can create the perfect schedule. You can make a detailed to-do list. And still procrastinate. Because information does not automatically remove emotional resistance. In fact, sometimes knowing more creates another problem. Overthinking. You start researching instead of acting. You tell yourself you need more information before you begin. You need the perfect strategy. The perfect plan. The perfect time. The perfect conditions. And suddenly, preparation becomes a very sophisticated form of procrastination. Research feels productive because technically, you are doing something related to the goal. But there is a difference between preparation that moves you forward and preparation that protects you from taking action. Here is a simple question to ask yourself. Am I learning because I truly need more information, or am I learning because taking the next step feels uncomfortable? Be honest. Sometimes the answer is uncomfortable too. Another hidden cause of procrastination is perfectionism. Many people think perfectionists are highly productive because they care about quality. Sometimes they are. But perfectionism can also create paralysis. If the standard in your mind is, "This has to be excellent," then beginning becomes dangerous. Because the moment you start, you might produce something average. Or bad. Or embarrassing. And if your identity is connected to being competent, intelligent, talented, or successful, producing imperfect work can feel like a threat to who you believe you are. So instead of risking imperfect performance, you delay. And here is the strange part. As long as you have not really tried, you can still tell yourself, "I could have done it." But once you try, reality gives you feedback. Maybe you are not as good as you hoped. Maybe you need more practice. Maybe the first attempt fails. That can hurt. Procrastination sometimes protects the ego by keeping potential safely in the imagination. You can remain the person who could write the book, start the business, get in shape, learn the language, change careers, or create something meaningful. But potential feels much safer than proof. Proof can be judged. This is one of the most important psychological shifts you can make. Stop asking yourself to prove that you are talented. Start allowing yourself to be a beginner. Your first attempt does not need to represent your intelligence. Your first video does not define your potential. Your first workout does not define your fitness. Your first business idea does not define your ability to build a business. The beginning is supposed to be imperfect. That is not failure. That is how beginnings work. There is also the problem of self-criticism. You procrastinate. Then you feel guilty. Then you criticize yourself. Why am I like this? I'm wasting my life. I have no discipline. Everyone else is moving forward except me. And you might think that being hard on yourself will finally motivate you. Sometimes it does the opposite. Now the task is connected not only with stress or difficulty, but also with shame. Every time you look at it, you are reminded of how long you have avoided it. So the task becomes emotionally heavier. You avoid it again. Then you feel worse. And the cycle continues. Procrastination can become a loop. Avoid. Feel temporary relief. Feel guilty later. Become more stressed. Avoid again. Breaking the cycle does not always require becoming a completely different person overnight. Sometimes it begins by changing the next 10 minutes. Not your entire life. Not your 5-year plan. Just the next 10 minutes. What can you do for 10 minutes? Not finish. Not master. Not perfect. Just begin. There is another powerful reason people procrastinate. They are waiting to feel motivated. But motivation is unreliable. If you wait until you feel completely ready, you may wait much longer than necessary. The truth is that action often creates motivation. Not the other way around. Think about how often you have said, "I don't feel like doing this," and then, after starting, you suddenly found momentum. Your feelings changed because your behavior changed. That is important. You do not always have to negotiate with your emotions before taking action. You can feel unmotivated and still begin. You can feel uncertain and still take one step. You can feel afraid and still send the email. Courage is not always a dramatic moment. Sometimes courage is simply doing something while your mind is giving you 20 reasons not to. And then there is the issue of identity. Maybe somewhere inside, you have started telling yourself a story. I'm a procrastinator. I always do things at the last minute. I'm just not disciplined. Be careful with those statements. The more often you repeat them, the more natural the behavior becomes. Your brain starts looking for evidence that the story is true. But procrastination is a behavior. It is not your identity. You are not permanently defined by what you avoided yesterday. You can interrupt a pattern. You can create evidence that you are capable of acting differently. And that evidence does not need to be dramatic. One completed task matters. One uncomfortable phone call matters. One workout matters. One page matters. One application matters. 1 hour of focused work matters. Because every action sends a message back to your brain. I can start before I feel ready. That message is more powerful than it sounds. You also need to understand the difference between being tired and avoiding. Sometimes you genuinely need rest. Not every moment of resistance is procrastination. If you are exhausted, burned out, or mentally overloaded, forcing yourself harder may not be the answer. The challenge is learning to recognize the difference. Rest restores you. Avoidance usually follows you. When you truly rest, you eventually feel more capable of returning to life. When you procrastinate, the unfinished task often stays in the back of your mind, quietly taking up mental space. You might be watching a movie, having dinner, or trying to relax, but part of your brain is still saying, "You should be doing that thing." That is one of the hidden costs of procrastination. You do not completely escape the task. You carry it. You carry it into tomorrow. And sometimes into next week. A 5-minute task can occupy hours of mental energy when it remains unfinished. So here is a different way to think about productivity. The goal is not to become a machine. The goal is to reduce unnecessary resistance between intention and action. Make the first step obvious. Make it small. Make it easy to begin. If you want to exercise, put your clothes where you can see them. If you need to write, open the document before you go to bed. If you need to make a phone call, write the number down and decide exactly when you will call. Do not depend entirely on willpower. Your environment can either increase resistance or reduce it. And perhaps most importantly, stop making the task mean more than it actually means. Sending one application does not determine your future. One bad workout does not mean you are failing. One awkward conversation does not define your relationships. One imperfect piece of work does not reveal your true value as a person. Sometimes you procrastinate because you have turned a single action into a judgment about your entire identity. You are not just writing an email. You are proving whether you are competent. You are not just going to the gym. You are proving whether you have discipline. You are not just posting something online. You are putting yourself in front of judgment. No wonder you hesitate. But what if you allowed the action to simply be an action? An email is an email. A workout is a workout. A first attempt is a first attempt. You do not have to turn every moment into a verdict on who you are. And maybe that is the deeper lesson. You keep procrastinating even when you know what to do because knowing is only one part of the process. The real challenge is often learning how to move while uncomfortable. To begin while uncertain. To act before confidence arrives. To stop waiting for the perfect emotional state. Because that state may never come. There will always be days when you do not feel ready. There will always be moments when distraction looks more attractive than progress. There will always be a reason to wait. But your life is quietly shaped by what you repeatedly do when you have the opportunity to avoid. You do not need to solve your entire future today. You only need to stop asking yourself to become a completely different person before taking the next step. Maybe the most powerful thing you can do after watching this is not create a perfect productivity system. Maybe it is simply to ask yourself one honest question. What am I avoiding right now? Then ask another. What is the smallest possible action I can take before my mind starts negotiating with me again? And then do that. Before you feel ready. Before you have more motivation. Before you find the perfect plan. Just begin. Because sometimes the version of you that you are waiting to become does not appear before you take action. That version of you is created by the action itself. And one day, you may look back at all the things you once delayed and realize something important. You were never waiting for the right time. You were waiting to feel safe enough to begin. But growth rarely gives you that guarantee. At some point, you have to take the step while still feeling uncertain. And maybe that is where procrastination finally loses its power. Not when you become perfectly disciplined. Not when you suddenly feel motivated every day. But when you realize that discomfort does not always mean stop. Sometimes, it simply means you are standing at the edge of something that requires you to move. If this helped you understand your mind better, subscribe for more videos like this.